Oh, this is really cool. Hunger Games.
Here you go.
What's the Mockingjay? Is it 2 fingers or?
It's 3. It's the Girl Scout salute.
It's I can't help but think that he's called PETA for a reason. Bing.
Katniss.
His whole background story with Katniss has to do with bread.
You're stretching.
I don't think so. Am I?
Brr. Hey guys, this week we went to see
The Hunger Games, Mockingjay Part 2. The first 2 Hunger Game movies I really enjoyed. I thought they were a great mix of action and adventure with social commentary. They were both exciting and poignant and well thought out. And then Mockingjay Part 1 came out, and it was, you know, they did this cynical thing that Hollywood's doing these days, is they'll take the third book in a trilogy and they'll turn it into 2 movies.
And it's not like the third book was longer than the first 2 books. Movies stayed very close to the books, especially the final movie. Philip Seymour Hoffman died about a year and a half ago. In the midst of filming, he had about 2 weeks left to film, and they had some debate over whether they should digitize some of the scenes that were left and add him into it post-mortem, but they decided not to, which is a decision that I gotta go with. So there were a couple scenes changed because of that. And the only other real change between the book and the movie was how Katniss gets to the Capitol. They changed that slightly. It was not, to me, a big deal. I do feel that the third book was easily divided into 2 themes, and they did divide it in the appropriate place for doing that. It did make the third movie a little less visceral than the other 3.
You know, when you're doing an adaptation of a book, there's always more stuff in a book than you can get onto a movie screen. You might as well split it and turn it into a mini-series or turn it into a TV series. I mean, that they're doing great jobs with that. If you do book adaptations properly on screen, then they come off as more complex stories than what you get for things that are written directly for the screen. Because they're trying to find ways to balance all the complexities of the novel in there. And they did a great job with the first 2 films. The first half of Mockingjay, it was such a different change of pace from the first 2 Hunger Games movies.
Why is there no fighting and no amazing events?
And it was an incomplete story. I think that's probably the bigger thing, is that it felt like it was, it just felt like it was a bridge between 2 other movies. It would have been great as the first chapter of this movie. This one, though, I thought, you know, it did a great job of bringing it back to the original flavor.
Well, in the first 2 movies, it was about holding on to your humanity in these drastic battle scenes. This movie touched on a little bit what happens when you lose your humanity and lose sight of humanity in the passion of battle. It shows that war is much more complicated than you might have originally thought it was. That rather than being just a member of an army, people both in front of and behind the scenes have an amazing amount of power if they access it. It's the difference that any one person can make. The movie, in a lot of cases, a lot of war movies have to do with how powerless everybody in the war is as they just try and survive. And this one actually made a big deal about how powerful a single individual could be and how much influence they could have on the outcome of a war, which I believe is why Donald Sutherland in an interview said how he hoped this movie would politically charge the youth of this nation to take a stand about things. Some nifty things about the behind the scenes in the movie is there's a scene where Buttercup the cat is under a sort of barrage. I was really curious as to how they were doing the scene.
How did they do the scene, Cheryl?
What they did is when the cat is under bombardment, the bombardment is not actually real, it is CGI, and they spent 2 days filming that scene to get the cat to react to what was going on that wasn't actually happening. I thought it was kind of nifty.
I thought the cat was pretty mellow, and the thought did occur to me, that's a bunch of CGI.
That was a hardcore cat, though. Buttercup is a hardcore cat.
If I had run through as much as Buttercup had, I'd probably, just sort of brush it off too.
You also see a lot more of the Capitol in this movie. The Capitol was actually filmed in Berlin because they wanted it to look kind of run down and bombed out. Now, the makeup director for this movie was the female judge from the show Face Off. There are a couple people in this movie who you may recognize from Game of Thrones. Commander Lim was played by a different actress in the first Mockingjay movie. In this movie, she is played by the actress who plays Brienne of Tarth. Another Game of Thrones character, the woman who plays Marjorie Tyrell, is played by Natalie Dormer, is also in this movie playing Cressida. If you recognize her unit leader but don't know where from, you may recognize them as Remy from House of Cards. The two kids at the end of the movie, the two children, were Jennifer Lawrence's nephews.
Huh.
Apparently the first one was born when the first Hunger Games was shot. So it was like their destiny to be in this movie.
And learn how to shoot a badass bow and arrow.
Yeah.
Bye! Bye! Happy Hunger Games on Thanksgiving.